ダメだねダメよダメなのよ
Like a Dragon Yakuza is a new series that'll be on Prime Video starting today. In fact, I'm putting up this video right now and then the season drops very soon, so this will be probably watched in succession with that. And this is of course based on the very popular Yakuza video game franchise of the same name, which has sold millions of copies all over the world and has a massive fan base that has been very devoted to it. Some of those fans are in fact friends of mine, and if they're watching this video, they know that I just started playing the games recently. Finally, after getting rid of a ton of backlog, and so I've just really gotten into the world of Yakuza as well. And I can completely understand why it's as addictive as it is, because there's so many interesting things going on in Kamurocho and with these characters that naturally you want to keep playing more and see where the story goes. I have no idea what happens in the Like a Dragon games, so all of that is about to be a surprise to me. But going into the show, this is based essentially on the first game, or the remake, Kiwami if you prefer. And over here you follow Kazuma Kiryu, who in 1995 is accused of a murder and is sentenced to a while in jail. He comes out 10 years later in 2005 to see that Kamurocho has changed dramatically, but there also seems to be a war brewing amongst the other Yakuza clans because a huge amount of money has been stolen, and unless it comes back, fingers are being pointed and there might be war and there might be bloodshed. And at the same time, there seem to be some mysterious killings happening as well, and no one really knows who's responsible for that. And Kiryu finds himself in the middle of all of this. And that's about the gist of what Season 1 is tackling. If you heard the plot, then you know there are some things over here which are taking right from the first game, and it's trying to do its own things. And when I say trying to do its own things, it mainly comes to the origins of the characters. A lot of time in Like a Dragon is spent with the younger versions of Kiryu and Nishiki especially. And you're sort of seeing them rise up the ranks at the Tojo clan and to try and make a name for themselves and try to really, become the characters, the versions of the characters that we know. And that is a story that hasn't really been told in the Yakuza games. That is something that is quite new, at least not to my knowledge. Like I said, I've only played Zero and Kiwami I'm not really sure if at some other point you saw some of this, but to the best of what I know, I don't think some of this is in there. But nonetheless, that is something that is a big change from the material. Now, when it comes to adaptations like this, one thing that I often think about is there are two audiences. And I've talked about this before with other reviews as well. There is, of course, the video game audience, the gamers who have followed along with the franchise and know everything when it comes to Yakuza. But then there's also casual TV viewers who don't really play video games and are just trying to watch a TV show. I use this example often, but like my family, for instance, they don't play video games. Like, I'm not expecting them to play all of Fallout to understand what's happening in Fallout, the TV show. And so similarly, I'm not expecting them to play all the Yakuza games to, start watching Like a Dragon. So you have to also make a show that manages to be a good show in its own regard while also honoring the things that came before it. And one thing that I will say about Like a Dragon Season 1 is that I think when it comes to the visual aesthetics of some of the stuff, it does a pretty good job. I think it captures Kamurocho very nicely when it comes to, just the world itself and how it looks and everything that's going on over there. And when it comes to some of the characterization, I think it's also pretty effective. One of the best examples of this is Majima. From the game to the show, it almost seems like a one-to-one copy at times. And the certain mannerisms and the, eccentric, bizarre, whacked-out nature of that character is portrayed quite nicely over here in the show. And I have to give major props to that actor. He did a really good job. He even kind of looks like him, which is pretty crazy when you really put that into perspective. And some explorations of characters like that are pretty effective. In fact, when it comes to the work which is going on with the Yakuza clans and everything that is erupting between them, some of those accuracies are fairly nicely represented visually, and that is something to be credited. In terms of the world building, there's some neat stuff done over here. And I would say the storyline in the past, which is this, expanded backstory when it comes to Kiryu and Nishiki and Majima, I think this is actually the most interesting part of the entire season, and it's easily the part which I was the most invested in, seeing how all of the, friendships rose and fell as time went on, and the reasons for why everything happened the way that it did. The action is also very fun. There are moments where it's really, really good. There are some, underground fights that are going on, especially those were very, very brutal, and I did like some of that. And I think those are also good aspects of it. But one thing that I feel like really does hold the show back as a whole is also when it comes to all the stuff regarding the story structure. And this is where I feel like the show suffers quite a bit, because while there are things that are interesting, when it comes to the present day, it takes away from a lot of the tension, and the present day storyline itself is not nearly as interesting as the stuff that they're doing with the past. And this also comes through with a thudding lack of momentum as a result, because it can often feel like this thing where we are going to the present day to see how the stakes are being, more elevated by the day, but at the same time, it doesn't really feel like it's a problem until you eventually see some stuff start to explode, which does happen, and it's all done in a very serious tone, which I'm fine with. But I want to address this really quickly, because I'm sure if you're somebody who follows Yakuza, if you're not somebody who's into the games instantly, you'd often think of a more goofy sense of things with Yakuza, something more fun. But the early stories are not quite like that. There are fun side missions going on, and there are things that you can do, but this takes the serious route. And it's hard to sort of tonally go from a very serious thing to a very fun thing quickly, though the show does have, like I said, its fun moments, but this is the serious tone show. So just a fair warning of that going in. But back to what I was saying, one of the biggest issues that happens with this in terms of the characterization and the dialogue is it makes for a very inconsistent viewing. A lot of the positives that I mentioned so far, a lot of it is based in the past. When it comes to the present day, a lot of this falters, and there are representations of characters that don't work as well, such as Kiryu. I think the stuff that's going on with Kiryu in the past is way more interesting than Kiryu in the present. Kiryu in the present dresses like the version from the games, and there are some similarities going on, but there is this factor to him which I can't quite put a pin on it, but it didn't always work for me. I don't think that's, the actor's doing a terrible job or anything. He's fine in the show, but it's just the way the writing around him is done. I feel like he's not nearly as compelling with the present day material as he is with all the stuff that's going on in the flashbacks. Same thing for Nishiki, actually. All the stuff that's going on in the present, if you've played the games, then you have some notion of what's going on, although there are some changes made here and there when it comes to their arcs. But the stuff that's in the past is way more interesting, which severely affects a couple of subplots, especially when it's relating to stuff going on with Yumi, as well as the killings that are happening. Some of that stuff, especially when other subplots sort of intertwine with that and other side characters get involved with it. Some characters feel like they're from the games. They're there because you need to have them in there sort of to make sure you have some familiarity with them, but at the same time, some of them don't really add much to the story as a whole. That being said, I don't think the show is a terrible show or anything. I just think it's fine. I think it has potential to be something even better if they do a season 2. There's definitely stuff that they can do which is expanding upon what works over here. But as of right now, it's a show that has a bunch of positive stuff and a bunch of not so positive stuff, and overall it just leads to kind of a mixed bag. I am curious to hear what the fans are going to say though, because I feel like there are going to be a lot of opinions on it and lots of thoughts are going to go around, so I'm curious to know what those will be. But as of where I stand, I think it's just okay. I'm going to give Like a Dragon Yakuza Season 1 a B-. And I think if you take the strengths of this, put it into Season 2, there is some hope there. It could be a lot better. Time will tell, though, if we get that Season 2 and what else could happen. Who knows? We'll have to wait and see. Guys, thank you very much for watching. Look forward to more videos very, very soon. As always, if you like this, please do subscribe and enjoy the show.